All right, we get to include our negatives today. So, before we get too far into this, let's just recap how negative exponents work. What even are they? What's going on? So, I was telling you yesterday that if you had, um, let's say, x to the third over x to the fourth, okay? If you are if you have the same base, which I do, all I need to do is subtract those exponents. So this does equal x to the -1. That's absolutely true. But almost everything that you're going to encounter is going to tell you to not have negative exponents. You have to have positive exponents in your final answer. Well, what am I supposed to do? 3 minus 4 is -1. I can't just like make that positive. Well, you can't. You can't turn a -1 into a positive one, but what we can do is we can express this a little bit differently. So I don't even really like to deal with this middle step at all. I almost never do 3 minus 4 in my head and think of it as a -1. So I'm going to jump right to this. I'm telling myself I have x to the third on top, x to the fourth on the bottom. If I cancel out everything that I can, I'm left with x to the first on the bottom. So 1 over x is the same thing as x to the -1. Okay? So that's true. So if I needed to rewrite something, like if I had, let's say I did a problem and my answer was x to the -5th, but I'm not allowed to write it with negative exponents. How can I rewrite that with positive exponents? Well, all you have to do, if you have a negative exponent, that means that your base just needs to move into the denominator. And then you're going to rewrite it with a positive exponent. So, oh, right, 1 second. There we go. These two things are exactly the same. X to the -5th is the same thing as 1 over x to the 5th. So one thing you can kind of think of is if you have a negative exponent, you can think of it like you need to take the reciprocal of your base and then raise it to the positive exponent. So if this had been a fraction, for example, if I gave you 2/3 and I wanted you to raise that to the -2nd power, that negative exponent is telling you take the reciprocal. So now it's 3/2, and now you're going to raise it to the +2 power. So you actually get out 9/4 there. How cool. What happens if you have a negative exponent and it's already in a denominator though? How do you handle that? Well, I'm going to give you, so let's say I had this. Let's say I had 2 over x to the -3rd. Okay, well, this looks awful, but it's really not that bad. I'm going to show you a super shortcut in a minute, but I want you to understand why it all works. So think about what we just said about a negative exponent. That negative tells you to take the reciprocal of this thing and then raise it to the positive exponent right there. So just ignore that 2 in the numerator. Just ignore it for a second. Just look at x to the -3. That really becomes 1 over x, and then I'm going to raise the whole thing to the 3rd power. So that becomes 2 over 1 to the 3rd is just 1 over x to the 3rd. Now, how do you handle a fraction and a fraction? Keep, change, flip, right? So I'm going to keep the numerator, change the multiplication, and I'm going to flip that denominator over. So this whole thing just simplifies out to be 2x to the 3rd. Gosh, I wish there was an easier way to get there than to do all of this rigmarole. Oh, good, there is. But this rigmarole is why this shortcut works, okay? So let me show you. If you have 2 over x to the -3rd, my claim is that you can jump right here very easily. If you have a fraction, and in that fraction you have a negative exponent, all you need to do is anybody with a negative exponent just needs to move their location. So this guy right here is in the denominator and he has a negative exponent. I just have to move him to the numerator and make that exponent positive. That's it. That's my shortcut. It's just going to pop right up there. So watch this one. If I had something like x to the -2 y over x to the 4th y to the -3rd. Say I had this, right? I'm literally going to go piece by piece, and I'm going to ask myself if they're going to move or they're going to stay. So, oh, hang on one second. There we go. All right, so I'm going to look at this first x right here. Because he has a negative exponent, he has to move downstairs. So he's going to move down to the bottom. Okay, done. This y is to the positive first power. It has a positive exponent, so it doesn't move at all. It's going to stay right where it is. So I'm going to leave the y upstairs. Now I'm going to look at my denominator. This x to the 4th, that's a positive exponent. So it's not going to move. The only ones that move are negative exponents. That one's going to stay in the denominator. And then I have this y to the -3rd. It's a negative exponent, so he needs to move. So he's going to move upstairs like that. And now all I have to do is simplify these. So y times y to the 3rd in my numerator gets me y to the 4th. And then downstairs, x squared times x to the 4th is now x to the 6th. And I'm done. Okay, so that's sort of the easiest way to handle negative exponents in a fraction. Just move them. Okay, so let's try using some of the rules that we know, throwing negative exponents in. Oh my gosh, so frustrating. Okay, here we go. All right, so let's look at number 1. Okay, so I'm going to start alphabetically. M to the -3rd times m to the -3rd. What's the rule when you're multiplying two numbers with the same base? Oh yeah, you add their exponents. So -3 and -3 get me -6. Okay, now let's look at the n's. N to the 4th times n to the 3rd is going to get me n to the 7th. Now, if you leave your answer like this, you're going to lose points because it says that you cannot have negative exponents. They're not allowed. So I need to, the n to the 7th is fine. It's this thing that's not fine. So what do I have to do with that thing? It's gotta move, right? I know it's not a fraction right now, but you can always make it a fraction, right? Put it over 1. So this thing has to move downstairs. So that is my final answer. N to the 7th over n to the 6th. Okay, let's try 3. The only way to get good at these is to try 1,000 of them. So the more you try, the better you'll get. Number 3, start off with the numbers. 2 times 4 is just 8. Okay, got it. Now let's go alphabetically. U, there's only one U, so I'm going to leave it as U to the -3rd. I know I need to fix it, but let me just combine things first. And then V's. I have V to the 4th times V squared, so that's V to the 6th. So now there's my answer, and it's a mathematically correct answer, but I'm not allowed to have the negative exponent written. So what happens? This guy has to move down. So my final answer looks like this. 8V to the 6th stays up top, and then downstairs I'll have that U to the positive 3rd. Okay, final answer, I'm done. Let's try number 5. So one thing I noticed right away, I have that B to the 0 in there. So just that B to the 0, I can kind of just cross it out because it just turns into a 1. I don't even need to deal with it. Okay, so I'm going to give everybody this exponent of -4. So that's going to be 2 to the -4th, a to the -16th. All right, everybody with a negative exponent has to move. So both of them are going to move to the bottom. What does that mean is left in the top? Hopefully you're saying a 1. There's always a 1. If everything moves to the bottom, there's a 1 left on top. So now on the bottom, I'll have 2 to the 4th, which I know is just 16, and then a to the 16th. Notice how all of my exponents are positive now. You cannot leave an answer with a negative exponent written. If you do, it's not right. You're not done yet. Okay, so there's that one. Let's try 7. Oh, I swear. Why doesn't this thing just like know what I want to do? Do it for me. Okay. Okay. Jeez. All right. So 7, I got to give everybody this -2 exponent. So that's going to be 3 to the -2, y to the -4th. They're both negative. They both go downstairs. So I'm just going to have a 1 left up top. 3 squared is just 9, y to the 4th. That's not so bad. Okay, now starting with 9, we have fractions to begin with. Let's see what's going on here. The y to the 0, we're just going to cancel it out. Notice, ladies and gentlemen, that I did not cancel out the 4. The 4 is not being raised to the 0 power, only the y. Okay, not the 4 at all. If I want to raise both of them to that power, it would have to be in parentheses, and it's not. So it's only the y that's being raised to the 0 power. That 4 is still there. So let's go piece by piece. This x, is it going to move? No, it's being raised to a positive exponent, so it stays right where it is. This y to the -3rd, does it move? Yes, negative exponents move, so that is now downstairs y to the 3rd. This 4, does it move? No, it's not being raised to a negative exponent, so it stays right where it is. And now I just ask myself if there's anything else I can simplify. No, there's not. By the way, how do you know if there's more for you to do? Well, the short answer is you need to check your numbers. Your numbers need to be fully reduced. So in this case, I mean, I only had a 4, but for example, you would never leave like 2x 4y to the 3rd. That's not a simplified answer because you could reduce the 2 over 4. Okay, so first check that. Check to see if there's any fractions that can be reduced like that. And then you're just looking for your final answer can only have one x in it. It could be to any variable, but you can't have an x on top and an x on the bottom. That's not simplified. You can't have you can't have an x on top and then times an x squared. That's 2 x's as a base. You can't do that. There can only be one x as a base. Same thing with all the variables. So each variable can only have one of them. So you can't also have a y on top and a y on the bottom. That's not simplified. So just make sure that there's only one base of every variable. Okay? And 11. Let's see. Is this? Oh, we got some really good ones coming up. So let me erase this. Okay, 11. Let's see. So I'm just going to go one by one, see if they move or not. 4 stays because it's raised to the 1st power. This n right here, does it move? No, it's being raised to a positive exponent, so it's going to stay right where it is. This m to the -3rd, you betcha, it's got to go downstairs because it's negative. This n to the -4th that was already downstairs, where does it go? That's got to come upstairs now. Whatever has a negative exponent has to move. Okay, so now I'm here, and now I just see if I can simplify anything. I can. N times n to the 4th is going to get me n to the 5th. And I'm done. Okay, 13 looks super intimidating. There's so much going on, but it's nothing you can't handle. Let's just go step by step. So remember, me personally, I'm going to do this raising to the 3rd at the very end. Another thing that's jumping out at me is I do have an a to the 0. So look, it's already better. And now I'm just going to go step by step. So I'm going to leave the to the 3rd. And now I'm just going to simplify the numerator. There's nothing to do in the numerator, so I'm going to leave it. In the denominator, there's a 2. And then a to the -1. And then b, look what I have. B to the 3rd and b to the -1. What is b to the 3rd times b to the -1st? You're going to add the exponents, right? So that actually gets me b squared. Okay, now I'm going to look at the whole fraction and see if there's anything that needs to move or be reduced. And right away, you see I have 2 over 2, so those two just cancel with each other. Now I'm going to look at the a's. This a in the numerator is going to stay right where it is. and then this a downstairs has a -1. So what's going to happen to that one? It's going to move up, and you already had a in the numerator, and now you're putting another a up there. So aren't you going to end up with a squared in that numerator? And then what happens with the b's? Look what you have. B squared over b squared, they just cancel each other. Wow, okay, so that whole thing just turned into a squared, but don't forget you still have to raise the whole thing to the third power. What's in my denominator? Everything got canceled out, so there's just a 1 there, which means in the denominator, I really don't even need it. So all I have to do is a squared to the third, and that just gets me a to the 6th. So that whole crazy mess just turned into a to the 6th. Oh, I love exponents. Okay, let's try 15. And that's our last one. Okay, so let's see what we got. I see an x to the 0. Bye. I'm going to handle the squaring at the end. And let's just look at the numerator. Don't even look at the denominator. Just look at the numerator. I have 2 times 2, so it's going to get me a 4. And then I have x to the 4th. And then y, look what I have. I have y to the 1st times y to the 1st, so that's going to be y to the 2nd. Okay, downstairs, there's nothing to combine there, so that's just going to stay like that. All right, now I'm going to look at the whole fraction. So let's see. I have 4 over 2, which is just going to reduce to be 2 over 1. So I don't need to write the 1 in the denominator. So those reduce, right? 2 over 1. X's. There are no x's to cancel with the x to the 4th, so it's just going to stay like it is. And then let's look at the y's. I have y squared on top, and this y to the -1 needs to move up. So I already have y squared up top, and now I'm going to put another y to the 1st up there. So altogether, I'm going to have y to the 3rd up top. What's left in my numerator? Just a 1. Everything else reduced out. Don't forget, I still have to square this. So now when I square everything that's in there, 2 squared is just 4. X to the 4th squared is now x to the 8th. And y to the 3rd squared is y to the 6th. Ta-da! Not bad, right? They're kind of fun. Okay, you try the other ones.